Luxury cars are symbols of power, speed, and status, but when things go wrong, the results can be horrifying. In this one-hour compilation, you'll witness the most disturbing car crash deaths involving some of the world's most prestigious vehicles. From devastating high-speed collisions to tragic moments caught on camera, these crashes reveal the dark side of luxury and speed. Brace yourself for an intense, unforgettable experience. This is 1 hour of most disturbing car crash deaths involving luxury cars.
May 18, 2024, in Pune, India. Vedant Agarwal, a 17-year-old from a wealthy builder's family, had just finished his final high school exams. That night he went out to celebrate with friends. By the next morning, 2 people were dead, and a much deeper story had begun to unfold. One involving privilege, influence, and an effort to dodge accountability. Vedant and his friends first went to Kosi, a bar in Koregaon Park, around 10:30 p.m. Even though they were all underage, they were served alcohol. They drank until midnight, spending 48,000 rupees, paid with Vedant's grandfather's credit card. When Kosi stopped serving them, they moved to Black Club inside Marriott Suites and spent another 20,000 rupees. By 1:22 a.m. they had left. Despite being extremely intoxicated and having a driver with him, Vedant insisted on driving his father's unregistered Porsche Taycan Turbo S. Around 2:30 a.m., while speeding through the Kalyani Nagar junction at nearly 200 kilometers per hour, he hit a motorbike carrying 2 24-year-old IT professionals, Anish Awadia and Ashwini Koshta. Ashwini died instantly. Anish was rushed to a hospital but didn't survive. The Porsche was destroyed on impact. Witnesses said there were no brake marks at the scene. Locals pulled Vedant from the car and handed him over to the police. But things quickly took a strange turn. Within 50 minutes, a politician named Sunil Tingre arrived at the station. He had been called by Vedant's father, Vishal Agarwal, a well-known developer. Shortly after, the police's handling of the case began to raise eyebrows. Vedant wasn't tested for alcohol right away. His test was delayed by more than 8 hours, enough time for substances to leave his system. He was taken to Sassoon Hospital around 9 o'clock a.m., but the sample wasn't collected until 11 o'clock a.m. Reports also claimed he was given pizza and burgers while in custody, though police denied this. Later, it was revealed that the blood sample didn't belong to Vedant. It had allegedly been swapped with his mother's. This led to the arrest of hospital staff and others. Vedant appeared before the Juvenile Justice Board and was released the same day. His bail conditions included writing a short essay on road safety, visiting a police station for 15 days, attending counseling, and getting treatment for his alcohol use. The public was outraged. A minor with no license had caused the deaths of 2 people and was let off lightly. On May 20th, Deputy Chief Minister Devendra Fadnavis visited Pune and called for Vedant to be tried as an adult. More arrests followed. Vedant's father was charged under the Juvenile Justice Act for allowing him to drive and for encouraging his behavior. His grandfather, aged 77, was also arrested for allegedly confining the driver and trying to force him to take the blame. 2 senior doctors, Dr. Ajay Tawari and Dr. Srihari Halnor, were arrested for switching Vedant's blood sample. Investigators found that other people were involved in swapping samples for Vedant and his friends. A man named Arun Kumar Singh was arrested for helping cover up the events. 2 more individuals had even offered their own blood samples to pass them off as those of the boys. Eventually, a 900-page charge sheet was filed, detailing how 7 people helped manipulate evidence. The bars that served the group were shut down, and other illegal clubs in the area were demolished. Vedant's bail was later canceled, and he was sent to an observation home until June 5th. Authorities pressed more serious charges, including those related to causing death through negligence. 2 officers were suspended, and the police commissioner launched an investigation into how Vedant received special treatment. The story drew nationwide attention. Even public figures shared past experiences with Vedant, accusing him of being a school bully whose behavior had long gone unchecked. Protests and criticism poured in. Rahul Gandhi called out the justice system for treating the rich differently. Despite efforts to cover things up, public pressure kept the case alive. On May 25th, after a petition from Vedant's aunt, the Bombay High Court ordered him released into her custody. Then, on July 26th, the Pune police officially filed their detailed charge sheet. 2 members of the Juvenile Justice Board were later removed for irregularities in how the bail was handled. In the end, the deaths of Anish and Ashwini exposed how deeply influence can twist justice. Their families are still waiting for truth, for answers, and for real consequences. It was December 2024 in Dallas, Texas.
Just after 3 p.m., a black McLaren hypercar worth $400,000 sped down Abrams Road in the Lake Highlands neighborhood. This was right near Forest Meadow Middle School, and students had likely just been released for the day. Traffic was beginning to build. Witnesses said the engine was roaring, and the car was moving incredibly fast. Then, in an instant, everything changed. Inside the car were two men, 29-year-old Cristobal Flores Espino and 31-year-old Robert Leroy Rocha. They were driving through a neighborhood full of families and kids walking home from school. As they approached the intersection of Abrams Road and Royal Lane, something went wrong. The McLaren lost control, veered off the road, and slammed into a large tree. The impact was violent enough to split the vehicle in half. The front section wrapped around the tree. The rear section was thrown more than 30 feet down the road. Pieces of the car were scattered across the street and sidewalk. Cristobal and Robert didn't survive. Emergency responders from Dallas Fire Rescue arrived quickly, but both men were already gone. The damage was so severe that rescuers had to use heavy tools to reach the wreckage. This wasn't a normal accident. It was total destruction. Another vehicle, a gold Toyota sedan, was also involved. A woman was driving it. She crashed into a separate tree and was taken to the hospital with injuries that were not life-threatening. Her car's front end was severely damaged, but she survived. The crash was so loud that nearby residents rushed outside. Several called 911. Others recorded what they saw. Photos and videos later posted online showed just how extreme the impact had been. The McLaren was barely recognizable. The front half was crushed around the tree. The rear half sat alone on the road, almost intact, but completely separated. The vehicle was believed to be a McLaren 570S coupe. It's known for its high performance, equipped with a 3.8-liter twin-turbo V8 engine. It can go from 0 to 62 miles per hour in 3.2 seconds, and its top speed exceeds 200 miles per hour. It's not made for city driving. It's a high-powered machine built for controlled environments. Police immediately shut down Abrams Road, especially the area near the school. Investigators arrived to measure skid marks, mark debris, and collect evidence. At first, the cause of the crash wasn't clear. Lieutenant Tremise Jones told reporters the next day that investigators were still looking into what caused the crash. They were reviewing every possible factor, including speed, distractions, and mechanical failure. There was no sign that police were chasing the car, and it hadn't been reported stolen. No substances had been confirmed at the time. The location of the crash added to the seriousness. This wasn't a highway. It was a school zone, where children walk home and crossing guards help families get across safely. Driving at high speed here wasn't just risky. It was dangerous for everyone nearby. Photos of the crash spread quickly online. People were shocked by what they saw. A car worth hundreds of thousands, torn apart like paper. The next day, candles and flowers appeared at the site. Locals came to pay their respects. Though Cristobal and Robert weren't public figures, their deaths deeply affected the neighborhood. The McLaren's carbon fiber frame is designed to handle extreme impacts. But even with that level of protection, the crash was too severe. The front was crushed beyond recognition. The rear section where the engine is was launched away but couldn't protect either occupant. No safety features could make a difference at that speed. In Dallas, the woman driving the Toyota was later released from the hospital. She began helping police with the investigation. Her account gave them a better idea of what happened just before the crash. The official cause still hasn't been confirmed. Investigators are reviewing all footage, vehicle data, and witness statements. They're trying to determine whether it was speed alone or if something else triggered the crash. This all took place just under 10 miles from downtown Dallas. A powerful car like the McLaren 570S wasn't meant for roads like this. And when that kind of power is used in a school zone, the outcome can be devastating. Cristobal and Robert lost their lives within seconds. A normal afternoon turned into a scene of destruction that no one could forget. Investigators are still searching for answers, and two families are left trying to understand how it all happened. It was September 2023 in Sardinia, Italy. A group of wealthy tourists was driving through the countryside near the small town of San Giovanni Suergiu. They were part of the Sardinia Supercar experience, a luxury rally where participants drive Ferraris and Lamborghinis through scenic areas and stay in upscale resorts. Among the group was a red Ferrari Portofino carrying 67-year-old Marcus Krautley and his 63-year-old wife, Melissa. The couple were from Wallisellen near Zurich, Switzerland. Marcus was the head of a logistics company with offices in Switzerland, Belgium, and Portugal. Melissa worked in human resources at the same firm. The two loved traveling luxury and fast cars. This rally, which cost between £10,000 and £21,000 to join, was one of many adventures they had done together. Also in the group was a blue Lamborghini Huracan, driven by Indian billionaire Vikas Oberoi, the head of Oberoi Realty, a company that develops luxury properties and hotels in India. His net worth is estimated to be $3.6 billion. His wife, Gayatri Joshi, a Bollywood actress best known for her role in Swades, was in the passenger seat. On that day, the group was driving north from Fort Village to Morris along the 195 Sulsatana State Road, a narrow two-lane route through rural Sardinia. What was supposed to be a smooth drive soon turned into a deadly accident. A German police officer on vacation captured dashcam footage that showed what happened. A white camper van was ahead of the supercars, slowing them down. Some of the convoy's drivers had already been seen ignoring traffic rules earlier that day. The narrow road left little room for safe overtaking, but the drivers seemed impatient. The video shows the Lamborghini attempting to pass the camper. At the same moment, Marcus in the Ferrari tried to pass both vehicles from behind. The Lamborghini swerved into the Ferrari's path. The two cars collided. The Lamborghini hit the camper van, flipping it onto its side and blocking both lanes. The Ferrari veered off the road, hit a grassy embankment, and burst into flames. Thick smoke rose into the air. The fire quickly spread, trapping Marcus and Melissa inside. Witnesses said they heard screaming. Emergency responders, including firefighters and an air ambulance, arrived quickly. But the fire had already destroyed the vehicle. Marcus and Melissa did not survive. Photos from the crash site show the Ferrari upside down and burned beyond recognition. The Lamborghini had landed at the bottom of a slope surrounded by dust and smoke. The camper van lay on its side across the road. Inside the van were a 61-year-old man named Lorenzo and his 62-year-old wife. They were tourists from northern Italy. After the crash, they found themselves sideways in their seats. The couple managed to crawl out and were later treated for non-life-threatening injuries. Vikas Oberoi and Gayatri Joshi were uninjured. Gayatri was seen sitting on the ground crying, while Vikas stood nearby in shock. Police began investigating immediately. All three vehicles, the Lamborghini, the Ferrari, and the camper van, were seized for examination. The dashcam footage given by the German officer became a key part of the case. It showed the Lamborghini crossing a solid white line, which in Italy means overtaking is not allowed. Though Vikas Oberoi had not been formally charged, prosecutors placed him under investigation for what Italian law calls double road homicide. If found responsible, he could face up to 7 years in prison. He was not barred from leaving Italy and returned to India shortly after the crash. Footage posted online later showed other rally drivers running red lights and ignoring traffic laws, suggesting that unsafe behavior was common during the event. The Sardinia Supercar experience is marketed as a high-end driving tour. Participants either bring their own luxury cars or rent one. For Marcus and Melissa, what began as an exciting trip ended in tragedy. The crash destroyed 3 vehicles, took 2 lives, and left others traumatized. Investigators are still working to determine exactly who was responsible. It was June 22, 2019, in Glengowrie, a quiet suburb in Adelaide, South Australia. 15-year-old Sophia Naismith was walking with her best friend Jordan Kalia along Morfett Road. It was a regular evening, but just before 10 p.m. things took a tragic turn. Sophia was a student at Brighton Secondary School. She was known for her kindness, drive, and school spirit. She played volleyball and had been chosen to represent South Australia in a national tournament set for August. Her parents, Pia Vogren and Luke Naismith, were proud of all she had accomplished. That night, as Sophia and Jordan passed the House of Tea and Chinese restaurant, a white Lamborghini Huracan suddenly veered off the road, jumped the curb, and struck them before crashing into the building. The car was driven by 37-year-old Alexander Campbell. He had owned the Lamborghini, valued at $330,000 for just 4 months.
It had custom plates that read Psycho. On this night, he was driving in sports mode, a setting that increases the vehicle's power and disables key safety systems, including electronic stability control. Sophia died at the scene. Jordan was seriously injured and taken to Flinders Medical Center. From her hospital bed, she posted a tribute to Sophia on Instagram, writing, "You will be forever loved and never forgotten." The tragedy shook the community. Flowers and messages were left at the site. Around 2,000 people later attended a public memorial for Sophia. Her school described her as a popular and vibrant student. Support was offered to students and staff as the city mourned. Authorities launched an investigation. Prosecutors said Campbell knew what disabling the safety systems meant, especially in such a powerful car on a cold road. They believed he had already lost control of the car earlier that same drive. Campbell was charged with causing death by dangerous driving. But 3 years later, during a judge-alone trial, he was found not guilty of that charge. The court said it wasn't proven beyond a reasonable doubt that he had accelerated dangerously. Instead, he pleaded guilty to a lesser charge, aggravated driving without due care. During sentencing, the court confirmed that Campbell had knowingly disabled the car's safety systems and used a mode that made it harder to control. The judge, Paul Muscat, said this was more than just a brief mistake. It showed serious carelessness. Still, Campbell did not receive prison time. In February 2021, he was given a suspended sentence of 4 months and 27 days due to his early guilty plea. He was also ordered to do community service and placed on an 18-month good behavior bond. His driving license was suspended for 4 years and 4 months, though some of that time had already passed while he was on bail. Outside court, Sophia's mother called the sentence sickening. Her father said they would focus on pushing for changes in the law, and they succeeded. In the following years, new laws were introduced in South Australia under the name Sophia's Law. These included fines up to $5,000 for disabling safety features in powerful vehicles. A new offense was created for causing harm or death through careless driving, which can lead to up to 7 years in prison. Police were also given more authority to suspend licenses on the spot, and soon, drivers will need a special license to operate ultra-high-powered vehicles. Volleyball SA also honored Sophia by launching the Sophia Naismith SA Spirit Award in 2023. It celebrates young athletes who show compassion, teamwork, and dedication, all values Sophia was known for. The first recipient was Zephyr Bruce, who continued to support her teammates even after being injured. Sophia's parents personally handed her the award. Sophia's life was cut short during a walk with her best friend. A man in a powerful car made dangerous choices, and the justice system couldn't fully hold him responsible. But her family's fight for change has helped reshape the law, ensuring her legacy lives on. January 2022 in Voula, a seaside suburb south of Athens, Greece. Zortsis Manoios, a 45-year-old businessman from Mykonos, had just picked up his brand-new red Ferrari 488, which cost around £250,000. It was a car he'd looked forward to owning, a sleek, powerful machine. That evening, he took it for a drive for the first time. His wife, Athena Kontopanou, was in the passenger seat. Zortsis wasn't just a businessman, he was well known across Greece. Back in 2003, at age 23, he appeared on the Greek version of the reality show, The Wall. At the time, he was a computer science student. His calm demeanor and appearance made him stand out. He even had a brief relationship with fellow contestant Sissi Giannakopoulou, which didn't last long but kept him in the public's memory. After his time on television, Zortsis moved back to Mykonos and launched his own clothing brand, Georgie, opening 2 stores. The business took off, and he became a familiar figure both to locals and tourists. He and Athena had 2 children and lived a quiet family life. But that night, things went terribly wrong. Just 3 kilometers, or under 2 miles, from where he picked up the car, Zortsis was driving along Constantinou Karamanli Street, close to Pigodakia. The road there is coastal and narrow in places. At some point, he reportedly tried to avoid a pedestrian. In doing so, he lost control of the vehicle. The Ferrari veered off the road and slammed into a tree.
Witnesses said the engine roared loudly just before impact. The crash crushed the front of the car, and it caught fire immediately. Greek singer Stan, who had been driving behind them, saw the crash happen. He rushed to help. Athena had been partially thrown from the car and was close enough to be pulled away. Stan managed to get her out just before the fire spread. She collapsed nearby, seriously injured. Zortzis, however, was still inside. A relative following in another car also ran to help but couldn't reach him. The flames had spread too fast. Zortzis was trapped behind the wheel and couldn't be saved. Video footage taken by bystanders and later shared by Greek news sites showed the Ferrari completely engulfed in flames, reduced to blackened metal in seconds. The drive had lasted only minutes. Emergency services responded quickly. Firefighters put out the fire and recovered Zortzis' remains. Athena was taken to the General State Hospital of Nicaea. She survived, but her injuries were serious. Police began an investigation right away. They reviewed nearby camera footage and reconstructed the events leading up to the crash. There was no evidence of another vehicle being involved. Early reports suggested Zortzis may have reacted to avoid someone on the road, and the Ferrari's power, combined with his inexperience behind its wheel, might have played a role. The crash left a deep impact on the country. Zortzis' sister, Katerina Monogios, a member of parliament with the New Democracy Party, received countless messages of support. People remembered Zortzis not just for his time on television or his business, but for who he was. Some reports claimed Zortzis was thrown from the car. Others said he was trapped inside. What's certain is that the Ferrari was destroyed in seconds and he didn't survive. Athena lived thanks to the efforts of those who rushed to help. Her condition remained uncertain in the early days, but she pulled through. 3 years later, Katerina spoke publicly. She said their family was focused on raising their children with memories of who he was, gentle, calm, and well-loved. The investigation is still open, but the early findings suggest that no other car was involved. Just a moment of reaction, a powerful car, and a road that didn't allow for mistakes.
After midnight on March 11, 2009, in Newport Beach, California, the streets were quiet until the sounds of two engines broke the silence. Driving at nearly 100 miles per hour were two cars, a white 1977 Porsche and a red Ferrari 360 Challenge Stradale. Behind the Porsche was 53-year-old Jeffrey David Kirby. Driving the Ferrari was Charles Mask Lewis Jr., co-founder of Tapu Tea, one of the biggest brands in mixed martial arts. Charles wasn't a professional fighter, but he was deeply involved in MMA. Born on June 23, 1963, he came from a humble background and had a vision for the sport long before it became popular. In 1997, he and two friends, Dan Punkass Caldwell and Tim Skyscrape Katz, started selling t-shirts out of the back of a rundown Mustang. That small start grew into Tapu Tea, a brand that would go on to sponsor fighters and help MMA gain mainstream recognition. By 2007, Tapu Tea was earning more than $22 million each year. Charles, known for wearing face paint and his bold personality, was also known as generous and loyal. He wasn't just selling clothing, he was supporting fighters who had little to no financial help. People like Dana White and Joe Rogan later said that MMA wouldn't be where it is today without Charles. On that night, shortly before 1 o'clock a.m., Charles was driving his red Ferrari through Newport Beach. His 23-year-old girlfriend, Lacey Lynn White, was in the passenger seat. Witnesses said Charles and Kirby were driving aggressively, weaving in and out of traffic in what looked like a high-speed chase. Kirby had been drinking that night. 2 hours after the crash, his blood alcohol level was still almost twice the legal limit. He also had 2 past convictions for driving under the influence, including one from 2002. As they sped down the road, Kirby lost control of his car and crashed into Charles's Ferrari. The Ferrari hit a curb and slammed into a concrete light pole. The damage was extreme. The Ferrari broke in half. The front of the car remained near the pole. The back half flew nearly 30 feet down the road. Charles was trapped inside. Emergency crews arrived, but he was pronounced dead at the scene. Lacey was thrown from the car and landed on a dirt embankment. She survived, but had serious injuries, including fractures and cuts. Kirby fled and parked his Porsche a quarter-mile away. Police found and arrested him later that night. He was charged with gross vehicular while under the influence and fleeing the scene of a fatal crash. Toxicology reports confirmed that Charles had no substances in his system. He didn't drink or use anything, and those close to him had always said the same. Kirby, on the other hand, had clearly been impaired. During the trial, Kirby's lawyer tried to say that Charles had also been speeding, but the jury saw through it. Kirby was found guilty and faced up to 13 years in prison. Charles's death shook the MMA community. He wasn't just a businessman. He was a mentor and a friend. UFC fighters like Chuck Liddell and Josh Barnett had lived with him during tough times in their careers. Dana White said, "We loved him." Zuffa CEO Lorenzo Fertitta added that Charles helped many fighters stay afloat financially. A public memorial was held on April 14, 2009 in Garden Grove. That July, Charles was inducted into the UFC Hall of Fame, the first non-fighter to receive that honor. His name was placed inside the octagon. Through Taputi's reality show, he had introduced future stars like Donald "Cowboy" Cerrone to millions. He gave his time and money, often with no return. In 1999, Taputi made $30,000. By 2008, that number had passed $100 million. Despite the success, Charles stayed focused on people. His motto was simple: simply believe. Charles Lewis Jr. died at the height of his influence. His legacy still lives on in the sport he helped build and the fighters he believed in. November 8, 2020, in Harare, Zimbabwe. Genius Kadungure, known to many as Ginimbi, had just left his mansion in Domboshava. He was driving his Rolls-Royce Wraith, a car worth about $500,000. It was around 5 a.m. Ginimbi had spent the night at Dreams nightclub, which he owned. The occasion was the 26th birthday of Michelle Amuli, better known as Moana, a growing influencer and fitness coach. The plan was to continue the celebration somewhere else, but they never got there. Earlier that night, Ginimbi posted a video on Instagram. He appeared lively and excited. He posted that they were going out to pop champagne. That was his last post to his more than 600,000 followers. In the car with him were Moana, Malawian businessman Limumba Karim, and a woman from Mozambique identified only as Elisha. Karim was wanted in Malawi for his connection to a 2013 government fund scandal involving more than 24 million British pounds. He had moved to South Africa to avoid being arrested. Witnesses said the group seemed happy and intoxicated as they left the club. The streets were mostly empty. As they drove along Borrowdale Road, a man named Danny Kuwanga saw what happened next. He said Ginimbi's car passed him at high speed and then tried to overtake another vehicle. That's when it collided head-on with a blue Honda Fit coming from the opposite direction. The Rolls-Royce spun off the road, hit a tree, and burst into flames. The Honda Fit was damaged on one side, but its driver and passenger survived with only minor injuries. The scene around Ginimbi's car was far worse. Kuwanga said the crash was so intense that Ginimbi was thrown from the car. He landed nearby, conscious but clearly in distress. Kuwanga and 3 others helped move him from the wreck. One witness said Ginimbi was shaking and calling out for help. Within 5 minutes, he lost consciousness and passed away. The other passengers were trapped inside. The impact had jammed the doors. People nearby could hear them screaming for help as flames spread. Bystanders tried using buckets of water and tree branches to control the fire, but it didn't work. The fire grew too quickly. Moana, Karim, and Elisha could not escape. Their bodies were burned beyond recognition. Emergency crews spent hours recovering them from the wreckage. The police later confirmed the deaths. A statement from Assistant Commissioner Paul Nyathi said the vehicle caught fire after colliding with the Honda Fit while trying to overtake. Moana had made a name for herself in Zimbabwe's entertainment industry. She was featured in music videos and was active on social media. Her father, Mr. Ishmael Amuli, was heartbroken. Their relationship had been strained after she separated from her husband in 2017. He said he disapproved of her lifestyle, which he believed went against their faith. He raised 5 children on his own after parting ways with Moana's mother. Karim's background made the crash even more controversial. Though his exact role in the fraud case was unclear, his name had long been tied to missing public funds. Elisha's full identity remains unknown. Ginimbi had become one of Zimbabwe's most well-known figures. He started his business at 17 and built a fortune between 7 million and 76 million British pounds, mostly through gas and petroleum. But he was better known for his wealth and luxury cars, Lamborghinis, Ferraris, Bentleys.
He often threw lavish parties, some costing up to $50,000. However, he had also been investigated for financial misconduct. Police had seized several of his cars over unpaid import duties. At the time of his death, one Bentley was still in police custody. He was also related to Mary Mubaiwa, the estranged wife of the country's vice president. The crash stunned the nation. Crowds gathered at the scene. Public figures, fans, and close friends came to mourn. His sister Nelia and manager Shally were deeply affected. Funeral plans were underway for all 4 victims. Moana's burial faced delays due to religious customs and family disagreements. The police continued their investigation, though it was clear that speed and reckless driving were factors. One witness said Ginimbi tried to help his friends, but the car exploded before he could. That morning, 4 lives were lost in an instant. Just hours earlier, they were laughing and celebrating. Then it all ended with fire, chaos, and silence. It was early Sunday morning, October 2nd, 2022, in St. Petersburg, Florida. 3 teenagers, 15-year-old Mario Bonilla, 15-year-old Keandrick Lang, and 16-year-old Malachi Daniels, were walking through a quiet neighborhood. Most people were asleep, but the boys weren't just out for a stroll. They were checking cars to see if any had been left unlocked. Lang used his shirt to pull on door handles, trying not to leave fingerprints. They weren't after any specific car, just trying their luck. Then, at a driveway near 62nd Avenue North and 28th Street North, they found a white 2016 Maserati. It was unlocked, and the keys were inside. Lang got into the driver's seat, Bonilla sat up front, and Daniels climbed into the back. What they didn't know was that a sheriff's helicopter was flying overhead. It had been deployed for another case nearby, but happened to catch sight of the boys going from car to car. The deputies in the helicopter watched as the teens entered the Maserati and immediately called ground units to report a possible car theft. Lang pulled out of the driveway and turned onto 62nd Avenue North without turning on the headlights. It was just after 3:20 a.m. Deputies in marked cars activated their emergency lights to stop the vehicle. Lang hit the gas, believing he was being chased. But the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office follows a strict policy. No chasing vehicles unless certain conditions are met. A supervising sergeant told deputies to slow down, and they backed off to around 35 miles per hour. The helicopter kept following the Maserati. Lang sped up, fast. Just seconds before the crash, he was going 123 miles per hour. None of the boys were wearing seatbelts. Lang lost control of the car. It jumped a curb, slammed into a business sign, and flipped, landing upside down in a parking lot next to a building. The Maserati was destroyed, folded in half from the impact. Deputies arrived within seconds. Bonilla, in the front passenger seat, didn't survive. Daniels in the back was critically injured and rushed to the hospital. His condition was described as life-threatening. Lang was also taken to the hospital with serious injuries, but was expected to live. The entire event, from the theft to the crash, was recorded by the helicopter. The sheriff's office later released that footage during a press conference. The video showed Lang using his shirt to open the car door, the teens getting in, and the car speeding off with headlights still off. Just a minute and a half later, the crash occurred. Investigators found a .25 caliber handgun inside the wrecked car. It hadn't been legally registered since 1968 and was believed to have been passed around illegally. None of the teens had valid driver's licenses. While none had extensive criminal histories, they had been showing troubling behavior. Just a few weeks earlier, on September 11th, the same teens had been stopped by deputies in nearby Kenneth City for wandering around a neighborhood early in the morning. Officers contacted their parents, and the boys were taken home. No charges were filed. After the crash, investigators spoke to the families. The parents were heartbroken. One father had even moved his son to a different school, trying to change his path. But that night, all 3 had left home without anyone noticing. Sheriff Bob Gualtieri said the teens had been making poor decisions, though they hadn't yet faced real consequences, until now. The car's owner, who had left the Maserati unlocked with the keys inside, was contacted. At a press conference, the sheriff stressed the importance of locking vehicles and not leaving keys inside. One choice changed everything. One teen died. Another may never recover. The third survived but now faces serious legal consequences, all because of an unlocked car. The morning of November 22, 2023, just before Thanksgiving. The weather was cold and the roads were busy with travelers heading out for the holiday. At the Rainbow Bridge border crossing near Niagara Falls, cars moved slowly through inspection booths between the United States and Canada. Everything seemed normal. Then, just before 11:30 a.m., something unexpected happened. A silver Bentley Flying Spur suddenly sped down Niagara Street at a dangerously high speed. It crossed an intersection, slightly swerved, then hit a median with full force. The car launched into the air and crashed straight into a border inspection booth. The explosion was huge. Witnesses described a loud blast and a massive fireball. Smoke and debris filled the area. The car was destroyed beyond recognition. Border agents rushed in. Authorities shut down the entire area, closing all 4 U.S.-Canada border crossings. News outlets scrambled to report, and social media lit up with panic. At first, many feared it was an attack, but as more details came out, the story took a different turn. It wasn't planned, but it was still horrifying. 2 days later, the victims were identified as Kurt and Monica Villani, both 53 from Grand Island, New York, just 10 miles away. Married since 1995, they were known in their community for running Gooey's Lumber, a local hardware business with 7 locations across western New York. They were respected, kind, and generous. That morning, they were on their way to see a Kiss concert in Toronto. Before heading to the border, they had stopped at the Seneca Niagara Resort and Casino. The concert had been canceled just hours earlier, but the couple likely didn't know. The car they were in wasn't ordinary. The 2022 Bentley Flying Spur is a high-performance luxury vehicle. It can go from 0 to 60 miles per hour in under 4 seconds and weighs over 5,100 pounds. Used models sell for more than $200,000. It's built for speed, not for regular city streets. Footage from border security cameras showed the Bentley flying past slower traffic before hitting the curb and launching. The crash injured a border officer inside the booth, but they survived with minor injuries. The Villanis died instantly as their car caught fire. Nothing could be done. From the time they turned onto Niagara Street to the moment of impact, only about 30 seconds had passed. In that time, the car sped through several intersections and ran at least 4 red lights. It narrowly missed hitting other vehicles. The FBI quickly ruled out any intent or criminal involvement. It was declared an accident, but people were still left wondering, what caused the car to accelerate like that? Weeks before, Kurt had told friends he thought something was wrong with the gas pedal. No other details were shared, and it's unclear if it was inspected. Bentley Motors hasn't commented. The 2022 model had 3 recalls, but none involved acceleration. In 2021, there had been a recall involving gas pedals, but only for right-hand drive cars overseas, not this one. A road safety engineer later reviewed the footage and noticed a dark vapor trail behind the car, likely from the tires. This suggested Kurt was braking hard, awake, alert, and trying to stop. The Villanis left behind 2 adult children, 26-year-old Kurt Jr., a former youth hockey standout, and 27-year-old Mia. The family had a long history in the area, known for acts of generosity. In 2014, Kurt and his father gave away 250 turkeys for Thanksgiving. The Villanis often helped neighbors and supported community projects. Sadly, this wasn't the family's first tragedy. In 1978, Kurt's grandmother died in a boating accident on the Niagara River. A bridge that wasn't properly lit caused the crash. The family later won a lawsuit. The crash has raised questions about whether such fast cars belong on public roads. Even with advanced features, not all high-performance systems can prevent disaster, especially at those speeds. In the U.S., there are still no rules requiring automatic speed control. In under a minute, a luxury car turned into a fireball. 2 lives were lost, and a community is still left searching for answers. And it all happened in less than 60 seconds. 1st, 2024 in northern Italy. Around midday, a white Ferrari GTC4 was speeding down the A4 to A5 highway between Ivrea and Sant'Anna. Inside the car were 40-year-old DJ Hisni Kestut, also known as DJ Style Q, and 21-year-old Ukrainian model Anna Kravska. Earlier that day, they had left a nightclub in Sion, Switzerland, where Kestaj had performed. What began as a high-speed drive ended in one of the most serious road accidents Italy had seen that year. Anna, originally from Odessa, Ukraine, had built a modeling career and lived in Switzerland. She was active on social media, often posting about her trips and daily life. But just before the crash, she went silent. Her friends grew worried when they didn't hear from her after she told them she was heading to Italy. Kestaj was well known in the European nightlife scene. He had performed in several countries, including Albania, Germany, Switzerland, and the United States. Though he lived in Villeneuve, Switzerland, his wife and 2 children, ages 11 and 14, still lived in Kosovo. The night before the crash, he performed at the Jukebox Club in Sion. Witnesses saw him leave the venue with Anna. At around 1:00 p.m. on Easter Sunday, the Ferrari was reportedly traveling at around 200 kilometers per hour, about 124 miles per hour, when Kestaj lost control. Near the town of Alice Castello, the car slammed into a guardrail. The impact was so severe that the Ferrari split in half. The front of the car, where both passengers were seated, was destroyed and quickly caught fire. One of the front wheels was thrown several yards away. Only the rear of the car remained mostly intact. Witnesses said the car had been moving at extreme speed right before the crash. Emergency services arrived quickly, police, paramedics, and firefighters, but it was too late. Both Kestaj and Anna died instantly. The fire made it very hard to identify the bodies. Authorities first confirmed the identity of the driver, Kestaj. His body was found near the driver's seat, and a gold watch that had survived the fire helped confirm who he was. The second victim, a young woman in the passenger seat, couldn't be identified visually due to the fire damage. But Swiss police had just received a missing persons report from Anna's friends. The timing matched. She had told them she was going to Italy but never contacted them again. Witnesses at the club confirmed she had left with Kestaj. Investigators launched DNA testing, and a second gold watch, one seen often in Anna's social media posts, was found at the scene. Her friends were certain it belonged to her. The Ferrari they were in was a high-powered luxury car worth more than $135,000. At extreme speeds, even a small mistake can be fatal. Investigators found no mechanical issues or road hazards. The cause appeared to be speed alone. Photos from the scene show the extent of the damage. The front of the car was nearly gone, burned down to metal. Only the rear remained, offering a clue to the type of car involved. This case drew attention due to who the victims were. Anna and Kestaj were both active online and had large followings. Though they never confirmed a relationship, those close to them said they had been spending time together more often. Kestaj's brother, Agimi, described him as a kind and caring person, a loving father and devoted sibling. His 2 children were left without their father. Anna's friends were heartbroken. She had rebuilt her life in Switzerland and was doing well. The sudden loss hit them hard. Investigators shut down the highway for hours as cleanup crews removed the debris. Parts of the car had scattered across the road and nearby fields. Every piece was documented to understand how the crash happened. No foul play or outside factors were found. This was a case of speed, a moment of lost control, and a car that couldn't recover. There was no warning, no way out. Just an instant crash that ended 2 lives. 10th, 2025, in northern Spain. A British couple, aged 78 and 58, were driving a black Ferrari 488 GTB along the mountainous N621 highway in Leon. They were part of a group of around 20 British Ferrari owners traveling together as part of a high-end rally. The car, worth over $400,000, could reach speeds up to 205 miles per hour. This wasn't just a sightseeing trip. It was a carefully planned event for luxury car enthusiasts. The N621 is known both for its beautiful mountain scenery and for being dangerous. The road runs through steep terrain with sharp turns, sudden drops, and narrow stretches. While it offers amazing views, it requires extra attention, especially in a high-performance car like the Ferrari 488 GTB. The group had arrived in the city of Lyon the day before. Everyone was looking forward to a scenic weekend drive. But by early afternoon on May 10th, things went terribly wrong. At 1:47 p.m., emergency services were alerted. A vehicle had gone off the road and fallen into the Uso River. Witnesses reported that it lost control on a curve and disappeared over the edge. The car landed upside down in shallow water, with 2 people trapped inside. First responders rushed to the scene. The civil guard arrived quickly, followed by firefighters and medical teams. The area was difficult to reach. Dense trees, underbrush, and uneven ground surrounded the river. Firefighters had to cut through the vegetation to get close. When they reached the Ferrari, it was heavily damaged. The roof had collapsed, and the car was flipped, resting halfway submerged in the river. Debris was scattered across the area. Rescue teams worked for more than 6 hours to reach and recover the car and its occupants. Emergency crews had to remove the doors to safely take the bodies out. Only after that was the car turned upright. It was a slow and difficult process due to the damage and the setting. Though the names of the couple were not released, officials confirmed they were British. The vehicle had a UK license plate, and they were part of the rally. Witnesses said the Ferrari had been speeding shortly before the crash and was alone at the time. No other cars were involved. Investigators haven't determined the exact cause. Some believe the car may have lost control on a turn. Others suggested the driver may have suffered a sudden health issue. A local expert noted that a car with 700 horsepower demands careful handling, especially on roads like the N621. Photos from the scene showed the wrecked Ferrari in the quiet river, surrounded by greenery. The stillness of the water stood in contrast to the violence of the crash. Emergency workers described the recovery as emotionally difficult. Spending hours in the river, trying to retrieve 2 people who couldn't be saved, left a strong impact. The UK's Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office confirmed the deaths and said they were assisting the victims' families. By the next day, the story had made headlines across Europe. Reactions poured in online, from shock to condolences. Authorities are still reviewing the scene, the road conditions, and the car itself. It's unclear whether the couple passed away from the impact or from being stuck underwater. This wasn't the first tragic accident involving British tourists in Spain. Just months earlier, a woman had been seriously injured in Menorca, and 2 men died in a separate crash involving a speedboat. But this accident stood out. A scenic rally, a powerful car, and a challenging road all came together in the worst way. The Ferrari was removed from the river later that evening, and investigations are ongoing. Whatever caused the crash, whether it was the road, speed, or something else, 2 lives were lost. For the people who knew them, and for the emergency crews who tried to help, this road will now be remembered for something far more tragic than its beauty. It was the afternoon of August 23, 2018 in San Diego, California. Traffic on Interstate 805 was moving as usual, but at around 4:30 p.m., drivers began calling 911. A black McLaren 650S, valued at nearly $500,000, was speeding the wrong way on the freeway, going over 100 miles per hour. Moments later, it crashed head-on into a 2010 Hyundai SUV. The crash was violent. Both cars caught fire. Debris flew across the highway and hit more than a dozen other vehicles. 1 person was injured and taken to the hospital but survived. Inside the Hyundai were 43-year-old Eileen Pizarro and her 12-year-old daughter, Ariana. Both were pronounced dead at the scene. The McLaren's driver was also killed. He was identified as 18-year-old Trevor Heitman, a YouTube content creator known online as McSkillet, with close to 900,000 subscribers. Just 30 minutes earlier, Trevor had driven the same car through the gates of Ashley Falls Elementary School. Witnesses said he nearly hit pedestrians. He then got out of the car, threw an object at a door, broke a window, and drove off. No one was harmed, but the event left people unsettled. Authorities confirmed that Trevor was involved in both incidents. Based on the speed, direction, and his earlier behavior, many believe the crash was not accidental. For his followers, the news was shocking. Trevor became well known in the gaming world, especially for his videos about Counter-Strike, Global Offensive, or CS:GO. He also ran a business where he bought, sold, and designed digital weapon skins, some of which were worth thousands of dollars. At one point, his collection was valued at more than $100,000. But in early 2018, things began to fall apart. Valve, the company behind CS:GO, banned Trevor from trading after linking him to a website that involved gambling using in-game items. His account was permanently locked, and he lost access to everything he had built. After that, Trevor stopped posting online. His social media presence faded. Friends and fans noticed a change in his behavior. Some believe the crash may have been intentional, though police never confirmed that. At a press conference, the California Highway Patrol said they couldn't speak about Trevor's mental state. Toxicology results later confirmed that there were no substances or alcohol in his system, and the case was ultimately ruled accidental. What was confirmed was that Trevor entered the freeway at Carroll Canyon Road, driving south in the northbound HOV lane at over 100 miles per hour when he struck the Hyundai. Eileen Pizarro, who was driving the SUV, was a licensed therapist. She lived in San Diego's College area with her 3 kids, Dominic, 22, Angelo, 19, and Ariana, 12. That Thursday, Eileen and Ariana were heading to Orange County. Ariana was set to start 7th grade that Monday. She loved jazz music and dreamed of becoming a singer. Her brother Dominic said she was full of energy and very strong-willed. When officers arrived to deliver the news, Dominic said he completely broke down. He described his mother as selfless and deeply devoted to her children. Because of the fire, Eileen and Ariana's bodies were difficult to identify. Dominic started a fundraiser to help cover funeral costs, and within days it raised over $7,000. He shared how his family was struggling to accept what had happened. Photos from the crash showed the McLaren reduced to burned, twisted metal. Emergency crews closed the freeway for nearly 10 hours to clean up the scene. The story spread quickly online. Many couldn't believe the driver was McSkillet. In one of his past videos, Trevor had shown off the same McLaren, saying it could beat nearly any car in a drag race. He never revealed his face, so until that moment, most only knew his digital persona. Some believed that losing access to his account had ruined his future. Others thought the crash may have been a tragic accident. Authorities were still exploring all possible causes, including health or emotional issues. In just 30 minutes, from crashing through school gates at 4:00 p.m. to the deadly collision at 4:30 p.m., everything fell apart. At the school, staff confirmed someone had damaged property but said no one was hurt. Still, many were shaken by how close it came to being worse. On the freeway, the wreckage left behind told the story. Burned out vehicles, a grieving family, and a life cut short in seconds. It was April 19, 2025, in Concordia, Sagittaria, a quiet town in northern Italy. Luca Polito, a 51-year-old construction business owner, was taking his new Lamborghini Gallardo for a drive. He had bought the luxury car just days earlier, a dream he had finally made real. Riding with him was a friend in the passenger seat. The Gallardo, a supercar worth around 90,000 pounds and capable of reaching 200 miles per hour, was still unfamiliar to him. Luca wasn't just known for his business success. He was known for being generous, humble, and supportive. He was married to Sonia Trevisan and had a son named Andrea. After losing both of his brothers in recent years due to illness, Luca had become the last surviving sibling in his family. But that April afternoon, everything changed. Around 2:00 p.m., Luca was driving on a narrow rural road outside of town, bordered by farmland and shallow canals. According to witnesses, the Lamborghini suddenly sped up. Moments later, it swerved, flipped into the air, and landed upside down in one of the nearby canals. The water in the canal was only 28 centimeters deep, but the crash caused the vehicle to fill with mud and water quickly. Within seconds, the car was almost entirely submerged, trapping both Luca and his passenger inside. Drivers nearby saw the accident and called emergency services. Some even rushed to help but couldn't open the jammed car doors. Rescue teams arrived soon after. They managed to pull the passenger out first. He was alive but seriously hurt and was taken to a hospital in Portogruaro. His injuries were serious but not life-threatening. Luca, however, had been underwater longer. Still buckled into his seat, he was unresponsive when pulled out. Paramedics tried to save him, but he was pronounced dead at the scene. The likely cause of death was drowning. The news spread quickly. Many people in town were shocked. Luca was known to be cautious, especially about safety. Something had clearly gone wrong. Police and investigators from the Pordenone prosecutor's office launched a full investigation. They began by looking at possible causes: mechanical failure or driver error. Early crash reconstructions pointed to loss of control at high speed. Some mentioned a tricky stretch of road or a possible traction issue, but nothing was confirmed. The Lamborghini was inspected for mechanical faults. Media across Italy covered the story. Some said Luca was still getting used to the car's powerful engine. Even at lower speeds, a car like the Gallardo can be difficult to handle without experience. While investigators searched for answers, Luca's family was left in grief. His wife and son had grown concerned when he didn't come home and wasn't answering his phone. After already going through the loss of 2 brothers and a sister-in-law, the family was once again struck by tragedy. Luca was buried on Wednesday, April 23rd in Portogruaro. The town of Concordia Sagittaria mourned his loss. The mayor, Claudio Odorico, called it a heavy loss for the community. Local restaurant owners who knew Luca personally described him as thoughtful and always willing to help others. His parents, still living, had now lost all 3 of their sons. As of now, investigators are still trying to determine the exact cause of the crash. Whether it was a technical issue or a moment of misjudgment, the outcome was devastating. The Gallardo, built for speed and control, can be dangerous in inexperienced hands. But even that doesn't fully explain how a shallow canal ended in such tragedy. Luca's friend is still recovering in the hospital, and the community is left waiting for answers, holding on to the memory of a man who quietly shaped the lives of those around him. April 6, 2024, in Los Angeles, California. At around 5 a.m., the city was still quiet. On the corner of Sherman Way and Reseda Boulevard, 2 LAPD officers noticed something strange. A white 2019 Lamborghini Huracan was stopped at a red light. But even when the light turned green, the car didn't move. They pulled up next to the vehicle and shone a spotlight inside. Behind the wheel was a man who appeared to be asleep. The officers turned on their lights and pulled the car over. The driver was 51-year-old Elliot Dugan, a local man with a long criminal record. They tapped on the window and woke him up. "Do you know why I pulled you over?" one of the officers asked. "No," Dugan replied. "You were asleep at the light." Dugan stayed calm. He said the Lamborghini was a rental and handed over his license and registration. The officers returned to their vehicle to check the information, and that's when everything changed. The car had been reported stolen, and Dugan wasn't just a tired driver. He had multiple outstanding felony warrants. This was no longer a simple traffic stop. The officers returned and asked Dugan to step out of the vehicle, but he refused. He claimed the car wasn't stolen and that he had rented it. He became argumentative and asked for his license back, saying he knew the law. Despite the officers' calm requests, Dugan wouldn't cooperate. Then, without warning, he floored the gas pedal. The Lamborghini shot down Sherman Way, quickly reaching extreme speeds. The officers rushed back to their patrol car, but by then, Dugan was already far ahead. Surveillance footage captured the Lamborghini speeding through the streets at 113 miles per hour. Moments later, there was silence. No braking, no warning, just a crash. Near the intersection of Vinalden Avenue and Sherman Way, the Lamborghini hit the center median at full speed. The car was torn in half. The impact destroyed several trees, and debris flew in all directions. Security cameras didn't catch the crash itself, but body cam footage showed the aftermath. One half of the car was in the westbound lane. The other was across the street. Auto parts and broken glass were scattered across more than 100 feet. Smoke rose from parts of the wreck, and some flames had to be put out by officers. As police searched the scene, they realized Dugan wasn't inside the car. They looked around and called out his name. Some local residents came outside, confused and alarmed by the crash. No one had seen anyone run. Moments later, officers found Elliot Dugan's body on the sidewalk in front of a nearby apartment complex. He had been thrown from the vehicle during the crash. Paramedics arrived shortly after, but it was already too late. Dugan was pronounced dead at the scene. The crash had caused serious damage beyond just the Lamborghini. Several parked cars were hit by debris. Windows shattered, roofs were dented, and at least 4 cars showed visible damage. A tree had also fallen onto one of them. Reports later showed Dugan had been in and out of Los Angeles County Jail over the past few years. His latest release was in January, after being held on a misdemeanor. At the time of this crash, he was not being held on bond. Following the incident, the LAPD released body cam and dash cam footage that showed the full event, from finding him asleep to the high-speed escape. They confirmed the car had been stolen before the crash. An internal investigation was launched to review whether the proper procedures were followed during the stop and the chase. Captain Kelly Muniz stated that it could take months and would involve video review, forensic analysis, and possible witness interviews. As of now, no new details have been released about the original owner of the vehicle or when it was taken. But one thing was clear: in just a few seconds, a man with open warrants in a stolen car made a decision that would end his life. Elliot Dugan was 51 years old. It was the early morning of March 18, 2012 in Beijing, China. The streets were mostly quiet, but on the North 4th Ring Road, a major highway, a crash occurred that would spark major controversy. A black Ferrari 458 Spider was speeding down the road. Inside were three young people. The driver, 23-year-old Ling Gu, was the only son of Ling Jihua, one of the most powerful officials in China, and a close aide to then-President Hu Jintao. With him were two women, reportedly either partially or not clothed. Some speculated they were engaged in intimate activity when Ling lost control. The Ferrari hit a wall at high speed near Baofuzi Bridge. Ling Gu died at the scene. One of the women also passed away, while the other survived with life-changing injuries, becoming paralyzed from the neck down. First responders had trouble identifying the victims due to the crash's severity, but it quickly became clear this was no ordinary accident. Soon after, a photo of the wrecked Ferrari was published in the Beijing Evening News and began circulating online. Users on Chinese social media started asking who the driver was and how such a high-end car ended up in such a crash. But not long after those posts appeared, they started disappearing. Government censors began removing any mention of the crash. Searches for terms like Ferrari, Little Ling, or Prince Ling came up empty. Behind the scenes, officials were trying to hide what had happened. Ling Gu's name was changed on official documents, possibly using the surname Jia, which sounds like fake in Mandarin. This caused more confusion since Jia was also the surname of another senior official who was reportedly upset by the rumors. Ling Jihua, the father, was allegedly shown the body but denied it was his son. Reports claimed he tried to use his influence over state security to manage the situation. One source said he contacted Zhou Yongkang, head of China's legal and political affairs, asking for help in covering up the incident. Although the government stayed quiet, political circles in Beijing knew what had happened. Ling Gu had crashed a $500,000 Ferrari while accompanied by two women. The public began asking how someone from a modestly paid government family could afford such a car. The timing couldn't have been worse. China was just weeks away from a major leadership shift. President Hu was stepping down and Xi Jinping was preparing to take over. Ling Jihua had been expected to rise into the Politburo, China's top decision-making group. But 5 months after the crash, in August 2012, he was quietly removed from his powerful role and reassigned. His new job, while still important, was clearly a step down. Hong Kong's South China Morning Post was the first to break the silence, confirming Ling Gu's death. Global media soon picked up the story. Though some foreign outlets reported unconfirmed and sensitive details about the crash, Chinese media remained silent. The story triggered outrage online. Many saw it as another example of the privileged lifestyles enjoyed by the children of high-ranking officials. Despite their parents earning modest official salaries, around $8,000 a year, these young adults were often seen in luxury cars and expensive clothing. Reports surfaced that the families of the two women were offered money to stay quiet. One claim said the funds came from an oil company executive with political ties. Efforts were also made online to discredit the story using fake accounts. But by then, it was too late to control. Back in China, the crash was never officially acknowledged. But people continued to talk about it, quietly. Ling Gu's classmates were shocked. One roommate said they had planned to attend graduate school together, but after the crash, he never saw him again. There were no public statements, no national mourning, just silence. Still, the black Ferrari crash remains one of the most talked about cases in recent Chinese political history, an event where power, secrecy, and privilege all collided.